Hey everyone, I'm Nicole,
And I'm Gabrielle.
and we are the hosts of the Spiritual Sisters podcast.
Join us every week as we discuss all the spiritual topics like astrology, mediumship, psychic insights, and so much more.
We are often joined by others we have met along our spiritual journey who are well versed in many of these areas.
Get ready for enlightening discussions and interviews and personal experiences that we hope will expand your mind and get you thinking outside of the box.
Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker or just beginning your spiritual journey, there's something here for everyone.
Check us out every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts. See you then.
Bye!
Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about the Queen Mary. Let's get started. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing tonight? I hope y'all are doing good. Tonight I am drinking something new. It is called Seagram's Escapes Calypso Colada. It's kind of like a pina colada in a can. It's really good. It's blue, and I'm drinking it out of my skull glass. So I will post a picture of that. And also, I am wearing a new spooky shirt tonight. Yeah, I found a Beetlejuice t-shirt. It has the Beetlejuice in the lime green, and then it has actual Beetlejuice in front of it in his outfit and his crazy hair. So I will post a picture of that. And speaking of t-shirts, in case y'all didn't see on Instagram, the D.E.A.D podcast does have merch now, which is super exciting. I want to thank everyone who has already purchased something. I appreciate you. Don't forget to tag me on all the social medias so I can see you in the merch. Go check out the link in the show notes. As of right now, there is still a 25% off sale going on, I think through the end of the week. And by the time this episode goes up, I might even have some new designs available too, which I will either already have made a post about or I will make a post about. Tonight's episode will be on the RMS Queen Mary ship. This is a recommendation by my very favorite friend Amanda with the Haunted and Strange podcast that she has with Sean. Definitely go check them out if you haven't already. Thank you, Amanda, for the recommendation. Let's get started. The RMS Queen Mary spent 3 decades transporting the rich and famous across the Atlantic before retiring in 1967. She survived the Great Depression and World War II and managed to avoid the tragic fate of her cousin, the Titanic. But under the glitz and glamour, this haunted ship is hiding several dark secrets. When the Queen Mary began its wartime tenure as a troop ship, it was painted with gray camouflage and refitted to both accommodate soldiers and prevent it from being an easy target for German ships. The ship's drab appearance, paired with its speed and sleek design, earned it the nickname of the Gray Ghost amongst its military personnel. No one could have predicted that its future notoriety would come at the cost of a perpetual state of haunting. But it was predicted that the Mary's fame would come in the future. It was 1934, and the Queen Mary had yet to leave the dockyard. It wasn't even finished yet, but that didn't stop Lady Mabel Fortescue Harrison, one of England's notable psychics, from making a bold prediction. Upon the ship's launching into the water, Lady Mabel predicted, "The Queen Mary will know her greatest fame and popularity when she never sails another mile or carries another fare-paying passenger." Her premonition couldn't have been more accurate. It was a sunny day in 1936 when the Queen Mary departed from England on her maiden voyage. She offered all the finest amenities: exquisite dining rooms, swimming pools, daily radio broadcast, a kennel for the passengers' dogs, a children's nursery, even a hospital. And she was fast. Boasting a top speed of 32 knots, she could travel from England to New York in 4 days. Her parent company, the recently merged Cunard White Star Line, was desperate for success. Cunard had gone broke during the Great Depression, and the White Star Line was still scarred by the Titanic and Britannic. Their fates rested on the Mary, and it seemed their luck had finally turned. The RMS Queen Mary dominated transatlantic travel, holding the blue ribbon from 1938 to 1952, and welcoming celebrities, politicians, and even royalty. But the world was in turmoil. At the outbreak of World War II, the famed ocean liner became a military transport ship, hauling between 5,000 and 15,000 soldiers across the world. And that's when things took a dark turn. At least 47 people died aboard the Queen Mary during her time at sea. A young crew member named John Petter was crushed by a door during an emergency drill. Another died after drinking gin that turned out to be cleaning fluid. The rest died of natural causes. That's what the official records report. But hundreds of others are said to have died on or at the hands of the Queen Mary prior to her retirement. In 1939, the ship was drafted into military service. Britain believed her size and speed would keep her safe from German U-boats, and they were right. It's rumored that Adolf Hitler offered a $250,000 reward to any submarine captain who could successfully sink her. But the Queen Mary's efficiency came at a cost. She was pushed to the limit, often cramming 15,000 soldiers into spaces designed for 2,200 passengers. In the summer, soldiers slept shoulder to shoulder above deck and took turns sleeping in bunks below deck. The lack of airflow made the cabins suffocatingly hot. Some soldiers died from heat exhaustion, others jumped ship. The Mary was no longer a luxurious cruise ship. It was hell. Legend says the staff went half crazy too. One rather gruesome rumor is that the galley crew locked the chef in his own oven one night, roasting him alive. Though there are no records of the chef's demise, there is substantial evidence that the Mary was responsible for the deaths of over 300 men. In October of 1942, the famed ship accidentally collided with the HMS Curacao, a much smaller cruiser that was escorting her around the Irish coast. The Curacao was zigzagging in front of the Mary, hoping to throw off any potential missile attacks, when the 82,000-ton ship mistakenly plowed into it, breaking it in half. Some of the crew died instantly. Others drowned or succumbed to hypothermia in the freezing water. The Mary never stopped to rescue them, as it would have compromised the thousands of soldiers on board, and an estimated 329 men died as a result. The truth of what happened was sealed until the war ended 3 years later. By then, the Queen Mary had undergone a 10-month renovation that erased any remnants of the military life. Paintings, fine china, and Art Deco furniture were returned to the cabins and dining rooms. She was ready to dazzle the rich, famous, and powerful once again. But all of the expensive decor in the world could not bury what had happened during the war. The Queen Mary was a haunted ship. Fast forward to to Halloween 1967. The Queen has just departed from England and is on her way to Long Beach, California. By the time she gets to her destination in early December, she'll have completed her final voyage. Left on the 31st of October, 31 years after her maiden voyage, left for her final resting place, trading in the cold Atlantic waters and gray English skies for the Californian coast and never-ending sunlight. California, where the hauntings would begin. Members of the Orange County Society of Psychics gathered aboard the Queen Mary in 1985 to hold a series of seances. Paranormal experts joined them in investigating the abandoned ocean liner. Anchored now for nearly 20 years, if ghosts were oil, they had just struck it rich. The number of deaths over the course of 3 decades is enough to draw attention, and then there are the unnatural deaths. Enter John Petter and W.E. Stark. The full extent of the toll taken on its crew during World War II and the years immediately after might never be revealed. But the stories of Petter and Stark offer a brief insight into the dangers of life aboard the Queen Mary. Dangers that help to create the ghosts that wander the ship's halls to this day. William Eric Stark, a senior second officer from Sunderland, England. His time during World War II is unavailable, but we do know that by 1947 he was aboard the Queen, where he would serve for 2 years. Unknowingly, they were the last 2 years of his life. When the ship left New York Harbor shortly after arriving on September 12, 1949, Stark had embarked on his final voyage. 11 days later, the Mary, now safely back in Southampton, Stark was dead. Poisoned. Not only was it an accident, but it's possible that his life could have been spared, all because of gin. Captain Andrew Mackler and a few of the men were having drinks after dinner. The captain requested that Stark fetch some gin from his cabinet, and fetch he did, or so he thought. Reaching into the captain's cabinet, where liquor was typically stored, Stark grabbed a bottle of gin. The story goes that the light in the room was either off or dim, but Stark had no clue that the bottle was full of carbon tetrachloride, a poisonous cleaning solution. After it was brought to everyone's attention, everyone who had drank and started to feel sick, Stark, who had drunk the most, refused to have his stomach pumped. Not concerned with the cleaning fluid burning through his digestive system, Stark continued to drink. At least this time it was real gin. Over the next few days, Stark's condition worsened. Forced to remain in bed, it was much too late to rid his system of the tetrachloride. Now, it was just a matter of time. Treating him in the hope of recovery, the further descent into alcohol didn't help, and by the time the ship reached Southampton, Stark's voyage through life was all but finished. His wife visited him immediately upon hearing of what had happened. Stark was fading quickly now, unable to answer the question forced beyond the tears, that of why he refused help. Stark succumbed more to his own folly than the poison just 2 days before his 31st birthday. Since the ship has been a functioning hotel and resort, guests have heard cabinets banging in the middle of the night. Legend has it that it's Stark's ghost looking for more gin. Still stumbling in the dark, even in death. With so many cabins and so much booze on the ship, don't be surprised to jolt from sleep after midnight from the sound of a cabinet door slamming, wood crashing into wood, down the hall, or maybe in your own room. July 10th, 1966. The Queen Mary is nearing the end of its run. Maintenance is needed, though somewhat absent due to Cunard Line's increasing loss of revenue. The 50s and 60s were a time for commercial flights, not sea travel. As the ocean liner continued to see a loss of profit, it also continued to see a loss of lives. John Petter was 18 years old, an Englishman and a fireman. In workman's overalls, equipped with a toolbox, he was the very stuff of youth dressed in the costume of maturity. Petter was working in a shaft alley, the name given to the corridors leading to the ship's propellers. These corridors were segmented by doors that could automatically close in the event of an emergency. Periodically, tests that saw all of the shaft alley's doors closing on command. For many, 13 is an unlucky number. John Petter is no exception to this rule. On July 10th, the young fireman was working on door 13. Drenched in sweat and grease, the ship's lower decks were typically close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the emergency drill alarm sounded. No one was around to see what happened, but from the scene of the accident, it seems that Petter was caught in the middle of door 13. He was later found crushed by the sheer force of the mechanical door, deceased. Those who have taken tours of the ship over the past 4 decades have reported the sound of metal clanging against the walls, the doorways. Something like the sound of a metal tool would make should it be banged or dragged against the rusting hallways of the ship's underbelly. Something like a wrench would make. There have even been a few sightings of a young man wearing overalls close to door 13. While some have not been able to look at the apparition's face, its proximity to the door suggests that it's none other than Petter. Maybe he's still trying to fix the door that he was working on at the time of his death. There's no need to worry about any malicious intent from this haunted corridor. In the event that it truly is the spectral remnant of Petter, he was a boy, one of whose memory was warmly cherished long after such a tragic accident in the belly of the Queen Mary. Petter and Stark are only 2 of the lives that we know of that perished aboard the infamous luxury liner. 2 out of 49, and, of course, that number excludes the potential lives lost during the war years. The Queen Mary is a ship of souls forever docked until it too rusts into oblivion. Until that fateful day comes when Cunard Line's Jewel joins its sister ship, the Titanic, at the bottom of the sea. The RMS Queen Mary in Los Angeles, California, is known for being one of the most haunted places in the United States, with some saying it is home to over 150 spirits lurking upon the ship. Visitors and staff have reported paranormal activity, including temperature changes, slamming doors, knocking, screams, flickering lights, children crying, apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. The Queen Mary's engine room is located 50 feet below water level, which is said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. Used in the filming of the Poseidon Adventure, the room's infamous Door 13 crushed at least 2 men to death at different points during the ship's history. During a routine watertight door drill in 1966, the most recent death crushed an 18-year-old crew member dressed in blue coveralls and sporting a beard. The young man has often been spied walking the length of the shaft alley before disappearing by door number 13. The stateroom was a problem long before the Queen Mary opened as a hotel. In 1948, a British third-class passenger, Walter J. Adamson, passed away in the room, under circumstances that have been lost to time. Later, in 1966, a woman staying in the room reported that she was woken up when the bed covers were pulled off of her, and she saw a man standing at the foot of her bed. She screamed and ran for the steward, but the man apparently vanished into thin air. In the years since, guests have reported hearing someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night and seeing bathroom lights mysteriously turn on. Even the hotel's maids have made reports of bathroom water running when no one had stayed in the room for days, and, on one occasion, of bed covers being pulled off right after the bed had been made. The room was closed to guests for many years, but it has since reopened for anyone looking for an evening of creepy fun. In 1989, 2 women were sent to clean this lounge, sitting silently on a chair in the middle of the dance floor. When a third woman came in to help with the cleaning, she remarked that the guest was staring, and she asked him to move. As the employees started to call security, the guest faded into thin air right in front of them, a feat all 3 women reported seeing at the same time. The ship's beauty salon, which is now used as an office space for hotel employees, in 2001, a member of the accounting staff came in early to work, at 5:30 a.m. to be exact, and simply felt like something was off. She went about her office tasks before sitting down at her desk and feeling unusually cold. Later, she felt someone brush up against the back of her chair, but no one was there. Just minutes after that, the woman saw a transparent figure in white walk across the room and pass through the door. Needless to say, the employee grabbed her keys and fled the room until her coworkers arrived. The first and second class swimming pools are 2 more popular spots for the Queen's otherworldly guests. Though neither is utilized today for their original purpose, spirits seemingly are not aware of that. In the first class swimming pool, which has been closed for more than 3 decades, women have often appeared in 1930s style swimming suits, wandering the decks near the pool. Others have reported the sounds of splashing and spied wet footprints leading from the deck to the changing rooms. Some have also spied the spirit of a young girl clutching her teddy bear. In the second class pool room, the spirit of another little girl named Jackie has often been seen and heard. Allegedly, the unfortunate girl drowned in the pool during the ship's sailing days and reputedly refused to move on. as her voice and laughter have been captured here. However, author and paranormal investigator Cher Garman points out that there are no known drownings to have ever occurred on the ship, although she says Jackie is there. In the Queen's Salon, which once served as the ship's first-class lounge, a beautiful young woman in an elegant white evening gown has often been seen dancing alone in the shadows of the corner of the room. In the boiler room, several people have reported seeing a little girl in the area, sometimes sucking her thumb and sometimes with a doll in hand. Whether or not the room is haunted by that little girl, we'll probably just choose to stay away. Even more odd occurrences have been made in several first-class staterooms. Reports have been made of a tall, dark-haired man appearing in a 1930s-style suit, as well as water running and lights turning on in the middle of the night, and phones ringing in the early morning hours with no one on the other end of the line. In the third-class children's playroom, a baby's cry has often been heard, which is thought to be the infant boy who died shortly after his birth. Now I am going to read you 3 supposed encounters on the Queen Mary ship. The first story. I had an experience in the pool area when I went with my husband around Christmas time a couple of years ago. We were on a tour, so already my skeptic spidey senses were heightened. I'm a believer, but I'm a very skeptical one. They have this god-awful special effects tour thing that goes through the pool area, so as a result, there are speakers with this ridiculous, ominous music that never stops, ever. So we go into the pool area with the tour, and they set up a twist on and off flashlight, and the guide starts asking questions. It lights up, and I kind of roll my eyes, like, okay, guy, that's a good one. Then he asks, Jackie, is that you? That's a supposed name of the little girl often seen in the pool area. And I hear, it's me, in a little girl's voice. I kind of chuckle because it was so loud that it sounded like it came through the speakers. No one seemed to react to it, though. I asked around later, and no one had heard anything. They only saw the flickering light. I've since been back to the pool area multiple times and spent a significant amount of time in the area, and there is no little girl's voice in the audio loop that the show speakers play. Story number 2. It was the early 1990s, and Disney had recently purchased the Queen Mary and started conducting ghost tours of the ship. At the time, my father was the manager of the hotel portion of the attraction and was a complete skeptic. That didn't stop him from telling us stories at the dinner table about how maids would quit regularly after having encounters or cleaning a room and ducking out to get fresh towels and coming back to find the room completely trashed. He found it amusing, at least until the afternoon that my sister, my college roommate, and I decided to take the ghost tour. He set us up with a tour group with several other tourists, and we followed the guide around as he told us about the history of the vessel, as well as stories about strange things that had taken place on the ship. There were no special effects or people in costumes. It just wasn't that kind of tour. I remember in the first-class poker room, he told a story about a reappearing blood stain on the floor that was still visible. They would clean it, change the carpet, etc., and the stain would always return. That creeped me out big time. But the scariest was yet to come. He took us down to the first-class swimming pool, where a little girl's spirit is often seen. We were standing on the stairs at one end of the pool, with the dressing rooms at the far end. I noticed that my sister and my roommate were whispering loudly to each other. They turned to me and asked me if I had seen the man at the other end of the pool. I had not. They both described him as an older gentleman with a white beard and navy-colored clothing, standing near one of the tiled columns. I looked but didn't see anyone. They both said that he had just disappeared. My sister was very upset and asked the tour guide who the man was and where he had gone. The tour guide assured her that there was no one in this area of the ship, that it was restricted. We walked down the stairs to the right-hand side of the pool, down the side and through the dressing rooms in the back, and exited on the other side where they had seen the man. There was no way for him to get out of the area without him passing by us. After the tour, we went directly to my father's office. My sister was extremely anxious and freaked out. She told my father the story, and he told her that it was probably a maintenance man and that he would make some calls and find out. Never mind the fact that now that Disney owned the property, employees were not allowed to have facial hair. Later that night, my father came home from work, and my sister confronted him straight away about whether he found out if there was a maintenance man in the pool area. He told her that yes, there had been a man down there, and she calmed down. Fast forward a few years later, and we were talking about other creepy encounters, and my sister starts to joke about the ghost she saw on the Queen Mary. We all start to laugh, and my father sheepishly states that he had just told her there was a maintenance man to calm her down. Any maintenance would have been scheduled after the tours were done for the day. He had contacted security to make sure no one had snuck down there, and they didn't find a soul. The third and final story. For those of you who don't know, the Queen Mary is a pretty well-known, reportedly haunted ship and attraction. It is open all year round and is a hotel now, permanently docked in Long Beach. We get down to the Queen Mary in the late afternoon before the Halloween festival starts, and my mom and dad realize they've forgotten their costumes at home. Mom's pissed, so they decide to hightail it back home, about an hour and a half away, since my mom is a major Halloween lover, and then come right back. I decide to stay in our hotel room, A116. If I remember correctly, our room had reports of strange experiences, so, being that I was, and still am, super interested in the paranormal, I decide to conduct my own amateur EVP session on my iPhone and ask basic questions. After a few minutes, I stop recording and play it back. At around 30 seconds, I had said, "Say something, I am here to listen." There was a pause of white noise, and then a distinct whisper that sounded like, "Hey." Now, the walls of the rooms of the Queen Mary are rather thin. You can hear people talking as they go down the halls, but they have that muffled on the other side of the wall quality. This response on my recording sounded closer in the room and was pretty clear, not to mention an intelligent response to my statement. But just was a whisper, which I doubt you would be able to hear a whisper from the other side of the wall during the day. I was excited and showed my mom and stepdad when they got back. They also heard it and agreed with my thoughts. Then we just go out at night and enjoy the Halloween festivities of mazes and costume contest, then head back into the ship hotel. At midnight, we go out and do what many other guests do and explore the ship at night to see if we experience anything paranormal. We walk around many of the floors of the ship hoping to see the infamous Lady in White and whatnot. We go up to their most haunted room, B340, which is closed down now and cleared out. There is a thin slit in the middle of the door that you can see into the room through. So I peered in, nervously imagining a black figure popping up at me. But I did not see anything. However, I did suddenly begin to feel very lightheaded and uneasy. I stepped away from the door and out into the hall and suddenly felt fine again. I don't know if that was anything, but thought I'd mention it anyway. Finally, we are back in our room to turn in for the night, and this is where things get really creepy. When you first enter the room, it is the master bedroom. To the bed's left is a doorway and a small hallway that leads down to the twin bedroom, where two twin beds are against the wall facing each other, and the bathroom is in the back. Now, I was supposed to sleep in that twin bedroom alone. I had read online before that the reports in our room happened in only the twin bedroom and bathroom part. So I was like, no way. I chose to sleep in the master bed with my mom and stepdad. I was on the left side of the bed, closest to the hallway to the twin bedroom. My mom was in the middle, my stepdad on the right. Just looking into the twin bedroom gave me chills. It looked so eerie, dark, and cold. I slept on my right side with my back to the twin bedroom the whole time. I could not bring myself to face it at night. At around 3 or so a.m., I started hearing movement in that twin bedroom, just like shuffling and a bump into the dresser. I felt really unsettled and definitely felt as if something was behind me in that hallway moving. You know that sensation where you can't see it, but you can feel something present, occupying the emptiness? My eyes were wide, but I absolutely refused to turn to look in there. I was sure it wasn't someone out in the halls, because it sounded literally right behind me, not on the other side of the wall. Also, it was 3 or so in the morning, and if it was someone outside, you would hear their footsteps moving away. But no, this was in one place in the room. It stopped. I dozed a little, but then, I shit you not, I heard clear as day this creepy jewelry box music playing in the room, right at my left corner foot of the bed. Then I hear it move around in front of the bed over to the right corner, and then it stopped. But as it was playing, I felt and saw my stepdad sit up. So I say, "Do you hear it?" And he says, "Yeah." And my mom mumbles sleepily, "The music?" And I say, "Yeah." It stopped, and we didn't hear it again, but I stayed awake the rest of the night. In the morning, my stepdad and I recount the jewelry box music, excitedly yet also shakily. My mom, however, does not remember hearing it at all, even though she half awoke and said, "The music?" when I asked if my stepdad heard it. Being that she was half awake, I assume she just simply forgot. Once again, I do not think it was from outside of our room in the hallway, because it sounded clear as a bell and literally right at the foot of our bed, moving to the right side of it. It was not muffled, and I did not hear footsteps or talking in the hallway at this time of night. Also, who would be playing jewelry box music that late, or even at all? That brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the D.E.A.D podcast. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the D.E.A.D podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at the deadpodcast1@gmail.com, or send me a DM on Instagram. If you enjoyed this show, please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you are listening on, and be sure to come back next week for my next episode.